Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast, Voices of Customer Experience. I'm your host, Crystal Garrett, and co-hosting with me today is the CEO of Worthix, Guilherme Cerqueira, or we call him Guy for short. And we are very excited to have a special guest with us today whose breakthrough thinking has charted market shifts from individualizing goods to today's focus on experiences and changes in the economy. I call him the prophet of the experience economy, Joseph Pine. Thanks for calling in, Joe.
My pleasure.
Joe has authored and co-authored several award-winning books such as Mass Customization, Infinite Possibilities, Authenticity, and the Experience Economy. He's an internationally acclaimed speaker and management advisor to Fortune 500 companies and entrepreneurial startups. Joe continues to be at the forefront as a thought leader, revolutionizing the approach to business. So I'll get us kick-started and turn it over to you two experts. So Joe, we'd like to begin with something that we feel is very disruptive that you said during an interview, which was there are no markets, there are only customers. Let's stop marketing and start customering. We love that. Can you speak to us a little more about that?
Well, yes. In fact, there are no markets. They are a fiction. There are only customers. Markets as commonly conceived of in business, they simply do not exist. They're convenient fiction for companies that do not want to treat customers as the unique individuals they truly are. A customer is not part of a market, nor a segment, nor a niche, nor a generation, nor a persona, nor any other agglomeration of anonymous buying units of indeterminate size. A customer is a living, breathing, individual person. And so we must therefore ascend to the proposition that all customers are unique, undeniably, unremittingly, unalterably unique. And therefore we must stop marketing and instead put into practice the principles of customering.
That's really amazing. I loved your response because I totally agree with that. And it's a very unique approach because it's totally outside in. So it's considering customers first and then maybe market and then product. So everything starts and ends with customers. That's amazing. The question that I really want to ask you is what comes next after experiences? Since we jumped from service to experience, what comes next after experiences?
Well, after experiences, there is another economic offering, one that is quickly becoming important in many industries, and that's to first recognize that experiences can be commoditized as well as goods and services. Experiences may be the easiest economic offering to commoditize because the second time you have an experience doesn't tend to be as good as the first, the third time not as good as that. And pretty soon customers are saying, been there, done that. That's the hallmark of a commoditized experience. So using our heuristic that we outline in the experience kind where customization is the antidote to commoditization. Commoditization is like the law of gravity. It drags you down year after year after year. Customization lifts you up because you can't help but be differentiated if you're working with each customer on their individual offering. So what happens when you customize an experience? When you design an experience that's so appropriate for this particular person, it's exactly the experience that they're looking for, then you can't help but turn to what we often call a life-transforming experience. In other words, an experience that changes us in some way. And that we call a transformation. And a transformation is the fifth and final offering in this progression of economic value, where you're now using experiences as the raw material to guide people to change, in particular to help them achieve their aspirations. And one way to think about it is that any industry that is about making people healthy, wealthy, and wise is in the transformation business, that what their customers really want is to be transformed by the experience to achieve their aspirations. And that's what companies should really focus on in the transformation business.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So even educational business, they're in the transformation business as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because that's about making people wise. Nobody wants to go to university and go to classes. What they want is the knowledge and the capabilities that they learn to make a difference in their lives going forward.
Okay. How do you see more commoditized industries such as banks or even the automotive industries? How can these companies play a significant role in generating transformation for their customers?
Right. Well, banks is one of those industries, it's about making people wealthy that really should be in the transformation business. And the thing that banks need to understand is that money is a means to an end, at least for most people. There are some exceptions, but money is a means to an end. And therefore, it's how do you provide the end rather than the means? How do you provide the aspirations to which people want to use the money, such as being able to send their kids to college or being able to go on a week-long vacation every year, or even as simple as being able to afford Christmas gifts or to be able to retire well. All of those are aspirations that people have and banking should be focused on how they help them achieve those aspirations rather than just on the money, which is the means to those aspirations. Automobiles is a little more difficult to think about directly, but the question is to understand, why do you want an automobile? Why are you using an automobile? Mm-hmm. What are the ends to which it is the means? And if you think along those lines, then you'll be able to come up with something. I mean, the obvious thing today is that particularly you think about somebody's children. When the children first learn how to drive, parents are very afraid. Very afraid they're going to get in an accident, something will happen to them. And so one of the things that automobile companies could do is to help a parent make their children better drivers. Right, that's the aspiration that the parents have for the children. We want our children to be great drivers, and they could get into the school, the car driving school business to help them be able to do that. Although interestingly, it's actually insurance companies that are doing that versus automobile companies today. A Safeco in Seattle actually has an insurance product called Teen Insurance, which is about helping, giving parents peace of mind while making their children more capable drivers.
How does time well saved and time well spent apply to the rise of autonomous vehicles, in your opinion?
If you look at the rise of autonomous vehicles and the fact that you now have, many people will have an hour or two extra per day, mm-hmm. What are they going to do with that time? I mean, obviously they can waste that time with games.
Yeah, exactly.
They can take naps and catch up on their sleeping, or they can use that time to better themselves in some way. And there are definitely things that can be done in the design of the automobile itself. And actually, it's putting auto in automobiles, what autonomous driving is doing, and in the services of getting from point A to point B to help them use that as a way of achieving their aspirations.
Yeah, so maybe in the future it's no longer going to be the main drivers will no longer be like the power of the engine or stuff like that we know today. Maybe it's going to be what's the value proposition of what happens inside the car. Sure. While it's taking you from point A to point B, right?
Right. One of the things that people say about autonomous vehicles today that have been in them is that they drive like your grandmother. That they're very safety conscious and not very assertive. So there's no use in having a powerful engine in an autonomous vehicle because it's not going to speed up that quickly. And ideally, what they want to get to is the point where the vehicles are basically just 5 feet apart, but they're all talking with each other. So if something happens on one end, they can react almost instantly rather than the delay that humans have. And therefore, again, you don't need that much difference in the automobiles in terms of their normal sales characteristics of power and all that. They'll all be good, but none of them will be great because you won't need it anymore.
Awesome.
Now let me change the subject a bit, still focusing on the customer. Let's talk a little bit about the gap of perception versus authenticity. There's research from Capgemini says that 75% of organizations believe themselves to be customer-centric, while only 35% of the consumers agree with that sentiment. So my question is, how do you render authenticity, and what are these companies missing that are suffering from the gap of perception of what they believe themselves to be and how customers are actually seeing them?
Well, it's so easy to give lip service to a concept, whether it's being customer-centric or staging experiences or a million other things, and not do the actual thing that they're giving lip service to. It's also that many CEOs will be talking aspirationally that we're starting on this journey to customer centricity, but we're not there yet. But in any case, when the CEOs gets ahead, when the company starts advertising things that are not quite there, then it will get that gap that people will tend to view it as inauthentic. They're in our book, Authenticity, What Consumers Really Want. We talk about two different standards of authenticity. One is being true to self. And that's knowing who you are and what you're about, what your purpose is, and do all of your actions, do everything that you do all of your offerings align with who you are at your core. The second key standard is being what you say you are to others. They advertise things that they are not. They talk about being customer-centric when they're not. And not being what you say you are will get you perceived as phony amongst your customers.
Yeah. One thing that I see a lot is like the most successful business out there related, in regard of experience or creating experience, they're basically not copying anyone like Amazon. They're not copying anyone, or even Uber. Like, they're understanding their customers to create their uniqueness or the perfect experience. So do you believe that part of this issue with and the thing that it's causing the lack of authenticity has to do with this movement of company always trying to find a magical formula or copying best practices?
I think it does relate, because if you just copy what somebody else is doing, then it may not be related to and integrated with who you are. What I always tell companies is don't do best practices, but rather practice best principles. In other words, don't copy what others are doing, but understand the principles that they're doing, extract out the principles from their particular situation and their circumstances, and then apply those principles to your situation and your circumstances. One of our our second ever Experience Stage of the Year award winner was the Geek Squad. Long before Best Buy ever thought of buying it. Mm-hmm. And we love taking clients on experience expeditions or learning excursions where we take them to a place and we let them experience these things and then extract out those best principles. And you look at the Geek Squad and think about how corny it is and nerdy and all that sort of stuff. But you look at the principles that they're costuming their employees. They are giving them props to be able to use. Sure. They have a strong theme and a motif about what they're about, and they provide great theater. So now take those principles and apply them to your business. How do you provide great theater for your customers? What are the props that you should be using, and so forth, right? So don't copy others, but rather really extract out the best principles.
Yeah. So in summary, there's no magical formula, right? It's basically more about culture, mindset, and then actually something that needs to be done, right?
Right, because your situation and circumstances are always going to be different than another company's, and back to the authenticity point, it is something that you need to make your own that reflects who you are, not who somebody else is.
You're listening to Voices of Customer Experience. If you want more CX content, visit us at Worthix.com to download one of our customer experience ebooks, subscribe to our blog, and get our newsletter on the future of CX delivered to your inbox.
You mentioned Best Buy. So let's talk a little bit about Toys R Us because of what's recently happened to them. I'd like to address Toys R Us and at the same time talk about individualization, memory creation, and distinctive experiences. How do you think Toys R Us could have changed their game using distinctive experiences?
Well, it's interesting. When Toys R Us first announced its bankruptcy last fall, the Harvard Business Review editors, called me and asked me if I could write an article, basically relate to it. I eventually did. It took me a while with my travel, but I wrote an article for a digital article with the Harvard Business Review last December on that shoppers need a reason to go to your store other than buying stuff. And Toys R Us never really got that. Well, they did get it in one case. Is they had a flagship store in Times Square in New York City for years. That was a fantastic experience. That it was great. They even had a mission feed experience of riding a Ferris wheel inside of the store with all the cars sponsored by various different toy and candy suppliers and that. But they never learned from that to their other stores and take their own principles of how do we provide a great experience. So there was no reason to go to the store because they just piled it high and tried to merchandise the heck out of it rather than provide an experiences. And toys are the easiest product in the world, the category of the world.
They really are.
To let people experience these,
That's right.
Contrast it with Lego. That's actually been an experience.
Legoland.
Yeah, for 50 years with Legoland, right? Well, where's Toys R Us land? Where is the full-on experience of all of these toys? Where the gift shop is your biggest toy store because people want to carry back the memorabilia that they had from all that they had experienced. But in the end, there just wasn't enough value there that people, that investors are willing to pay for. And it really is because they didn't provide a reason to go in the store. That's where in the HVR article, I outlined two different strategies that retailers, but in large measure, most companies can follow. And that's of time well saved versus time well spent. And Toys R Us, was a time well saved company. They wanted you to get in and out and get your toy and go. And the problem with any time well saved is that you're competing against Amazon and you're competing against Walmart. And nobody else is going to have the scale of those two companies and really be able to compete for the foreseeable future until we come up with a different way of doing it. And maybe virtual reality will provide that way.
Do you see that the salvation for retailers is to creating this mindset of time well spent, that there are no more room for brick and mortar companies, retailers, they're focusing on time well saved?
Yeah, the only ones I think will effectively have a time well saved in brick and mortar, is the Amazons and Walmarts themselves, as well as true convenience stores where you are looking for something, you need it now, and so you'll go to a convenience store. But otherwise, if you're looking for things very quickly, you can still order on the internet, and soon you'll be able to get it within a day from Amazon. And you'll also be able to pick it up somewhere, but it's where the retail stores are basically becoming warehouses, right? Or the opposite is that they should become more showrooms. They should become where you view it as time spent, and that's
The other day I was walking with my wife in the big mall close to our house, and I was saying, hey, there's nothing here that I can't buy on my phone right now and get it delivered into our house, like. Sometimes even today, I really would love to see this entire mall with stores that are like big showrooms.
Attractions. They need to become
delivering
attractions.
Experiences on how to use their products, or even in relation with what you said about transformation, on helping with a new style or how to use their electronics and this kind of stuff. That's what I feel that must be the future of brick and mortar. So investing a lot in time well spent.
One place I'll point to that I think does a great job about that is Italy. And Italy, based in Milan, is all about Italian cooking. And so they do want to sell you groceries and they want to sell you appliances, but they even have a cooking school where you actually pay a fee to learn how to cook Italian meals. And it's just a wonderful, vibrant experience.
Yeah, Italy is a great example. I love Italy, and I feel that they could charge a fee for you to, an entrance.
Exactly. Well, the logical conclusion to time well spent is that you actually align what you charge for with what your customers value, and that means charging for the time that they spend with you via an admission fee or a membership fee. So Italy does that with cooking schools. American Girl places do it with cafes and photo shoots and hair salons. And REI does it with a mountain that you can climb in the store. There are increasingly more and more retail stores where they're figuring out that they can actually charge admission for the experience that they have in there. And then you're providing time well spent. If customers are willing to pay you to spend time with you.
Okay, that's amazing. So I guess the salvation for brick and mortar retailers is to invest a lot in time well spent instead of time well saved, and leave the time well saved for Amazon, Walmart, and online platforms.
Exactly.
Talking about Amazon and digital transformation experience, one thing that I see a lot, and especially in large enterprises, is a lot of big companies saying, yes, we're investing a lot in customer experiences. We now have digital channels, and I feel that there's a lot of companies that still believe that investing in experiences is basically digitizing everything. What's your response for CX professionals who believe that by digitizing everything, they're improving?
Well, a couple of things. One is to understand that when most people use the term customer experience, they don't mean what I'm talking about. When most people use the term CX or customer experience, they're talking about, let's make things nice and easy and convenient. And those are all well and good, but those are a time well saved strategy. Those are service characteristics. They're not true distinctive experience characteristics. If you want to stage a distinctive experience, then while nice is nice, rarely does it rise to the level of memorability, where you want to create that memory within people so that they take away and view it as time well spent and talk about it. And then we routinize things that get in the way of being personal. And a true distinctive experience, you have to be personal. You have to reach inside of people and create that inherently personal experience within them. And then, of course, convenience is the antithesis of what I'm talking about. That's time well saved. Instead, you want people to value the time that they spend with you, as we talked about, and that is time well spent, and ideally charging a fee for that. So don't think in terms of CX and customer experience, nice, easy, convenient. Think in terms of providing a true distinctive experience. And then when it comes time to digitization, all the digital transformation, I am a big proponent of digitization. My first book on mass customization, which is the basis of my work now on customering, is that anything you can digitize, you can customize. Once it enters the realms of zeros and ones, you can instantaneously change a 0 to a 1 and vice versa. So you do want to digitize things that you can. You do want to be able to customize them, which is a key principle of customering, is that you give each customer exactly what they want. And I also wrote a book called Infinite Possibility on how to use digital technology to create experiences that fuse the real and the virtual, with virtual reality and augmented reality and so forth. But when most people now are talking about digital transformation in a CX context, they are really trying to make it more easy and more convenient. Yeah. Exactly. It really is a route to time well saved. Instead, when you're going through that transformation, transform into a time well spent company.
So basically, you have to have a very clear vision of which parts of your company you need to have an experience that it's related to time well saved, and which touch points with your customers you need to have a time well spent experience. So what you're saying is like customer experience is not only nice, easy, and convenient, and it really depends on how you feel and what you need, right?
Yeah, it's a very interesting insight, because experiences are built on top of services, which are built on top of goods, which are built on top of commodities. So to provide a great experience, you need great service, and that often means that you want to save your customers time over here so that they can spend their time over there.
Quick question for you on that. Looking at time well spent versus time well saved, is it possible to create, or how do you create a distinctive experience on both sides of those?
Well, if you're really after time well saved, then it's really about the service, not the experience. Now, it may be possible to provide something so distinctively that even though it's a short amount of time, not zero time, but a short amount of time, then you can, in fact, have it rise to the level of an experience. In some cases, that's novelty. If you look at Uber is, in fact, a time well saved strategy that they're looking to get you from point A to point B efficiently. And when you get there, you have no transaction. You basically get out and walk away. So you have to go through all the rigmarole there and save that time, particularly at your destination when you can touch and feel, taste what you want to do. But in fact, the first time you do an Uber, it's an amazing experience, right? You can just get on your phone and you can, call, it's like you have a magic wand in your phone. You summon a car to you. But then, so the first 2, 3, 4 times it may be an experience, but then you get used to it. So the novelty factor wears off, and then it becomes more pure time well saved. So there are things you can do when you're saving people's time in order to be able to create sort of a distinctive experience, but you got to be very pointed about it. And if they're looking for you from time well saved, you can't let that get in the way.
To hear more from Joe Pine, join him and his business partner Jim Gilmore at strategichorizons.com, where you can access their books and material and enroll in their Experience Economy Expert Certification course.
Now I want to bring up a kind of polemic topic, online privacy. Companies are being pressured, as you know, to deliver more and more individualized experiences. So in your opinion, what's the limit for individualization in the digital world? Like, do you think that people will soon perceive the extremely individualized experiences as an invasion of privacy or creating bad memories?
Well, the thing about data, I am a big believer. There's an article by Andy Kessler in the Wall Street Journal this week about how here's a simple thing. Congress should just pass a law that people own their own data. And boom, that'd be it. And that's the way I think it should be. That's the way companies should operate, is that you own your own data, whether it's the law or not, because then you'll gain more value from it. But not just research, but practice shows that consumers are more than willing to give data for when they perceive that they're getting value, and when that data isn't being shared just to target them. That's one of the key things with customering. Customering is not about targeting customers. It's about enticing them to want to bring them into a relationship with you. And to do that, of course, you've got to keep their data private, and you've got to create an experience that entices them rather than just putting a target in their back and slinging arrows. People don't like to be bombarded with all these ads and everything.
Right.
Rather, get to know me. Yes, have my data, use my data, but use that data to get to know me and what I really, truly want and need, and offer that to me rather than offer it to somebody else to advertise to me.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's very in line with the concept you said about customering. And now, since we were talking about the digital world, let's talk a little bit about Multiverse. This is an amazing concept that you created, where you consider time, space, and matter as the key dimensions that it's basically available for us to create experiences for customers. So can you talk a little bit about Multiverse and how the digital world is part of it?
Reality and virtuality.
Yeah, reality and virtuality.
Yeah, the Multiverse is the core framework of my book, Infinite Possibility, Creating Customer Value in the Digital Frontier. And I recognize that that all of our experiences happen in our universe of time, space, and matter. Physicists will tell you that's what experience is about. That's what the universe is about. And what I realize that digital technology does is it reverses each of those. It sends each of them in the backwards direction. That if you think about it, what digital is about is no matter. It's matter is about atoms. It's about the material substances that we touch and feel. No matter is about bits. It's the digital substances that we cannot touch and feel in the same way, but yet can greatly enhance the experiences that we have. An augmented reality is classically where you use digital technology to enhance a real world experience, that you're out there in the real world, and now you have this overlay of digital information that you put on top of that through a display, a screen of some sort, and that allows us to augment the reality that we have. So we have matter and no matter, atoms and bits, and we also have space and no space. Space is about the real places that we inhabit. You and I, Guy, are in this in our own respective real places. You there in a conference room, I think in Atlanta, me here in my home office outside of St. Paul, Minnesota. These are real places. But yet we're having this interaction thanks to digital technology that really creates a virtual place between us. And this podcast is really this virtual experience that people having. You think about what you can see on your screen, the pictures you can get, the scenes that you can have, the games that you can play, the worlds that you can inhabit with virtual technology. And so that's what virtuality really is. That's the opposite of reality. It allows us to have experiences in places that do not exist physically. So there's matter, no matter, space, no space, and there's time and no time. Time is the actual events that unspool before us moment by moment by moment. There really is a tyranny to time, and no time is any way that we can get out of that tyranny, any way that we can experience the past, or we can envision the future. We can get into flow. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's concept about flow experiences, where all sense of time just sort of washes away. And we really are just so into this particular experience. We can hyperlink time like we do on the web by jumping around in that. So there are, in fact, myriad ways that we can really play with time, and all of those allows us to get outside of that tyranny of time. So we can have experiences that encompass all of these factors that are matter and no matter at the same time, that are space and no space in a single experience, that in fact are time and no time. And that allows us to basically come up with new experiences that have never before been envisioned, engendered, nor encountered. For with the Multiverse, we are basically limited only by our imagination, and of that there is no end.
So time is the key dimension, right? So
Yep.
Trying to summarize it, it's like the best way to make sure that you're creating an amazing experience that will be memorable is to always, whenever you're doing it, you're trying to make customers lose track of time, even if it's because it was too fast, which is time well saved, or if it was because it was too great, which is time well spent, even if it take longer. But basically, when you get customers to lose track of time, it's because you're actually affecting their emotions and actually creating a great experience and memory. Is that correct?
Yes. And in fact, what experiences is about is really the design of time. When you design experiences, you're designing the time that they have, and that's that real time. But if you can design that time in such a way that they actually forget about time, then that's when you're really creating the best of experiences.
That's the point. It's like when you go to Disney World with your family, it's an amazing time well
is a non-factor. Yes.
You lose track of it.
Exactly.
And when you're shopping at Amazon, sometimes it's so quick that, whoa, it's already gone. Yeah.
Well, and let's use Disney as an example here for a second, because you see this aspects of where experiences are built on top of services. The one bad part about going to a Disney theme park, of course, is waiting in line. You're waiting in line is time wasted, right? Which is the worst thing that you want. You've got time wasted before time well saved and well spent. When you waste people time, then it really detracts from the experience that you create. So one of the first things they did is they did what they could to make waiting in line to be an experience. With the snaking the lines, you've got people watching with a pre-show for the experience. You learn about what you're going to encounter. And then finally, though, more recently, thanks to digital technology, they created the fast pass system so that many people could avoid the lines. And the ideal that they want to get to is everybody's out in the park enjoying everything, and they only go to a line within 5 or 10 minutes of when it is their slot to be able to do it. So that's where you're designing that whole time together.
They're basically blending time well saved experiences with time well spent experiences.
Absolutely.
To make sure that people are living most of the time well spent experience, right?
Yeah, using time well saved in order to enhance the time well spent.
Perfect. So many people who are listening may have the same question in their minds about career paths for customer experience. We're seeing companies invest in creating teams for customer experience. They're hiring executives for the position of customer experience officer to try and evangelize the company about experiences. However, we know that for most companies, like the CFO or the CEO or the COO, have very clear academic backgrounds or paths. But what about the CXO? Like, who are these people? What academic path do you see as most likely to become the customer experience officer for an organization?
Yeah, interesting, right? We've been promoting the Chief Experience Officer, CXO, for over a decade. And now we're really focused on it. I just came out with a recent article in the American Management Association about the roles of the CXO. And I think that the best place to come from a CXO perspective is an operational role in the industry. You can come from marketing. You can come from design and strategy. I would really hesitate if you were coming from finance without having some of these other backgrounds. But an operational role, one that really understands what the company is doing for its customers, one that has as part of it a customer-facing role at some point, so that you do understand customers and understand the company. I think that's the key, and so that you also then understand your offerings as well as your operations. And when you can do all four of those, that's when you can really fulfill that role. Although, I'll mention that almost nobody who goes into a CXO role feels like they're prepared for it because it is very different and it takes different things. So it's never one that you're going to have everything that you need. You need to move into that role and gain the skills that you need while you're there. But again, it's both internal and external facing on customers and the company, on offerings and its operations.
For the young audience that is listening to us, how to become a CX professional if you're starting from scratch today, if you're about to join a university, what should be the path?
Well, if you're about to go to university, one of the things I would do is actually take theater courses on the side. Yeah, no matter what field, because in the experience economy, work is theater, and you have to know how to stage. So you learn how to stage and experiences in that. I would also look at design classes. Whether it's industrial design or service design, product design, but learn how to design things, because that's a key skill that you need as a CXO. and then learn the people side of it. Learn what you can about marketing that really focuses itself on customers. Learn about how to ascertain what customers need and so forth, and then how to design offerings that fulfill those needs.
That is a great approach.
Amazing.
I love that.
I love that you start with
theater.
With theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, I studied like for several years. And
Me too.
It's a coincidence that
Well, yeah, good. You're well prepared.
We're ready.
Go out for a play.
So I guess I'm in the right place.
So Joe, as we wrap up, let's talk about your perspective on something in particular, and also your forthcoming projects. So how does Joe Pine keep up with the speed of change? And what's next on your strategic horizon, and how can we find you?
All right. Well, how do I keep up? It's the fact that I get to interact with so many people around the world, and all of the speaking, teaching, and consulting that I do. I get to visit the world. I get to see new experiences. I learn about them also through all the contacts that I have. I have thousands and thousands of contacts on LinkedIn, tens of thousands of followers on Twitter. I surprised myself at actually liking Twitter when I joined it, partly because I learned so much. I can impart my wisdom for whatever that's worth, yes, but I learned so much because people talk about all these new things that are going on. I also subscribe to 4 daily newspapers and get over 30 or 40 periodicals. So I'm doing a lot of reading. And what I always say I do is really it's about pattern recognition. As I begin to see patterns in what I read and what I experience, what people are telling me about, what I see with the companies that I work with, until new ideas begin to formulate. And then my purpose is to in life is basically to figure out what's going on in the world of business and then develop frameworks that first describe what's happening and then prescribe what companies can do about it. Or related to earlier conversation, the 3-word version of that, my theme is frameworks are us. That's what my partner Jim Gilmore and I do. And so what we're working, some things we're working on now is we talked about customer, and I want to make that into a new book, sort of built on my first book, Mass Customization, incorporating with what I know through experience economy and that. And then I'm also working with a colleague on some ideas around how, with the proliferation of smart products, we need to begin thinking about genius platforms, that we create ecosystems, and what's our role in the ecosystem allows us to really anticipate what customers want rather than just sense and respond to them. And then another colleague, Kim Korn, who's my co-author on Infinite Possibility, we're working on ideas on how companies can thrive forever. Rather than fall into mediocrity and eventually fail, how can companies really thrive forever? And that's some very exciting work that's starting to come to fruition.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for your time and your contributions to the business world and your wealth of insight. We'll continue to follow you, and we look forward to further cultivating this relationship.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the time here and the opportunity to share my ideas and frameworks with your audience, Guy. And thank you, Crystal, for all the preparation.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to our listeners. Please join us next week on Voices of Customer Experience to hear from Emory University professor and co-author of The Intuitive Customer, Dr. Ryan Hamilton.